An interministerial committee co-chaired by the Attorney General and the Minister for Financial Services and Economic Planning has been set up to steer and coordinate all the preparatory efforts. This committee provides strategic guidance on priority reform, strengthens the coordination across the 16 competent authorities, and oversees the effective implementation of the national AML CFT CPF reforms agenda. The Interministerial Committee is further supported by the core group on AML, CFT, and CPF under the chairmanship of the Financial Secretary. I'm maintaining a close oversight of the work carried out by both the Interministerial Committee and the core group. Third, Madam Speaker, within this relatively short period, we have made significant and tangible progress with critical AML, CFT, CPF initiatives. These include the completion of the National Risk Assessment, providing an up-to-date understanding of the evolving money laundering and terrorist financing risk facing our country. B, the completion of a dedicated risk assessment for non-profit organizations. C, the formulation of a comprehensive national AML CFT CPF strategy for the period 2026 to 2029. And D, the development of a robust administrative penalty framework to ensure that non-compliance with our legislation is effectively detected, addressed, and also sanctioned. Fourth, Madam Speaker, we have effectively enforced the UN Financial Prohibition, Arms Embargo and Travel Ban Sanction Act, and based on evidence gathered, already 3 individuals have been listed under the sanction regime for their links to terrorist financing activities. Fifth, despite severe fiscal constraints, we are providing the necessary financial resources to build capacity and recruit critical expertise to ensure the sustained implementation of our AML CFT CPF reforms. Madam Speaker, let me now turn to some key amendments being brought to this legislation, falling under the purview of my office and that of the Ministry of Finance. First, the Bank of Mauritius Act and the Banking Act. These amendments aim to enhance the effectiveness of supervision and enforcement by the Bank of Mauritius. They also facilitate timely information sharing with law enforcement authorities where there is a suspicion of an offense. Second, the Companies Act. The amendment provides for a clearer and more structured definition of a beneficial owner, ensuring consistent interpretation and application across entities. This ensures, Madam Speaker, that the true individuals who ultimately own or control business activities may no longer hide and operate behind corporate structures and remain beyond the reach of institutions. We see so many times people using prête-nom. I tell them, game over. Third, the Gambling Regulatory Authority Act. The gambling sector continues to present heightened exposure to illicit financial flows. The proposed amendments are intended to reinforce regulatory oversight, strengthen control mechanisms, and enhance compliance measures, thereby safeguarding the sector against money laundering risk. Fourth, the Income Tax Act and the Mauritius Revenue Authority Act. These acts are being amended to reinforce the powers of the Mauritius Revenue Authority, enhance coordination among the competent authorities, and ensure that illicit gains do not escape scrutiny. And fifth, the United Nations Financial Prohibitions, Arms Embargo and Travel Ban Sanctions Act is being amended to further strengthen the implementation of targeted financial sanctions. Madam Speaker, I should remind the House of the chaotic situation prevailing before the elections in November 2024. In the institutions, we were supposed to combat fraud, corruption, and financial crime. There was total incoherence in the way these institutions were operating. There was no collaboration or exchange of information among them. They had over the years developed, I think willingly, a silo mentality with consequences that I need not rehearse now. We all recall how drug traffickers, money launderers, and those engaged in criminal activities were having a field day, where the rule of law was daily abused in our public life by the behavior of those who were supposed to be looking after safeguarding this security. Today, our institutions are once again functioning without fear or favor and in collaboration for the public good. As I've said, Madam Speaker, the House will imminently have the opportunity to make further profound reforms to strengthen the independence and effectiveness of those institutions. It is not only domestic voices that, it is not just me or members of the House. The 2026 report of the respected VDEM Institute, which is based in Sweden, published recently the following observation, and I quote, Madam Speaker. It says, the 2024 general elections brought a change in government and halted authoritarian transgressions, unquote. Halted authoritarian transgressions. This is what the MSM was doing daily. It is worth dwelling on those words, Madam Speaker. Transgressions were indeed the modus operandi of the previous government. So deep and so widespread was the abuse, extending to the very top of government, encompassing even those trusted with the task of ensuring the integrity of our system of law enforcement, that their imagination shrinks from the prospect for our nation had they succeeded in their objects. This House will recall the statements I made here last year, reporting the conclusions of international experts. They haven't actually concluded it completely, but on the Orwellian technology, if I may use the word, secretly installed by the previous government, illegally to intercept and spy on communications and social media of the entire nation, believe it or not. We will come with proof on this. Even Honorable Juvali was there, he was being listened to. Judges were being listened to. Well, what was happening? Everybody, yes, of course, me and people in the opposition, yes, but even people in the government, they were being listened to. Not just political opponents, the whole population. The House will also recall with disgust the ugly window thrown open by the moustache leaks on the inside workings of an autocratic and immoral regime. They even went to the extent of defaming Virgin Mary. The Commissioner of Police of all that, he did that and was tolerated. Nothing. I know the Honorable Juval's father went to see the Prime Minister on this. I know that. And told him, you have to remove this guy. No, you get lost. His hands were tied. When you do dirty big business with people, your hands get tied. That is the problem. The VDEM views on Mauritius reflect the seriousness of the purpose of this government, to ensure that our institutions operate transparently and independently, and never again go back to the sinister and dark path charted by this discredited regime. But I'm glad to say, Madam Speaker, that with the Global Financial Centers Index published on the 26th of March of this year, Mauritius has now gained 8 places and ranks in the 50th position globally. This achievement did not happen by itself. It is testament to the strategic focus of this government to enhance our regulatory frameworks and protect our reputation as the trusted international financial center. Madam Speaker, I want to refresh the memory of those who seem to be suffering from selective amnesia, in particular those who are desperately trying to re-emerge on the political scene. I think he's not here, Minister Patrick Savaden mentioned the name, Alvaro Sobrino. Described by the Organized Crime and Corruption Reporting Project, and I quote, look what it says. Yeah, I will say that. Angolan banker who led an Angolan bank that collapsed with billions of dollars of unexplained debts linked to a scheme to siphon off hundreds of millions of dollars of government-backed financing. Yet, this man was given red carpet treatment in Mauritius, granted access to the VIP lounge, not once, not twice, 31 times. 31 times. And he was not alone. There were others of dubious background who were facilitated and feted as investigation into the collapse Silvermec is now beginning to show us. In fact, I should say, Madam Speaker, this Mr. Sobrino, I didn't realize, because I never met him, but somehow he found his way to the PMO. He called my secretary, and he said he needs to meet the Prime Minister. It's urgent. He was not on the... when I give appointments, if I give up an appointment to Mr. Duval, I will see him alone, not with somebody else. I need to know who comes in my office. So... I'll tell you when I'm speaker. So my secretary, my PA
I haven't met him yet. He said you didn't meet him, but you haven't met him yet.
No, I haven't met him. Yeah. I was giving an example. Even somebody in the opposition, I will meet only an appointment. And so my secretary came to see me and said, there's this man here, Mr. Sobrino, who says he needs to see you. I said, why? Does he have an appointment? No. But why does he want to see me? He said to my secretary, I have millions of dollars to invest in Mauritius. You know, when you come in the office of the Prime Minister and you say, I've got millions of dollars to invest, what does it mean? It means, meet me, I'll give you some millions. That's what it means. That was what was happening before. And I said to my secretary, if he wants to invest in Mauritius, he doesn't have to come and see the Prime Minister. Go to the Board of Investment. This is where they look at investment. So I threw him out. He was not happy, but he went. And I must say at that time, the Board of Investment did due diligence. They thought his money was dubious, of dubious sources, and they rejected his millions that he was bringing in Mauritius. They rejected it. What did he do, you think, Madam Speaker? He came back to my office, told my secretary, these people in the Board of Investment don't understand anything. They've rejected my project. I must see the Prime Minister. So again, my secretary came to see me. I said, tell him, if the Board of Investment has rejected his demands, then I have nothing to do with it. He must get out of the country. This is how I treated him. And this is the very man who came after I lost the election. He was given red carpet treatment 31 times. And he was not alone, as I said, there were others. In 2015, Mr. Sobrino was granted a global business license category 1 and the authorization to operate collective investment schemes by the Financial Services Commission at the time, chaired at the time by late Dave Manraz. In 2016, Mr. Sobrino was issued as an investment advisor unrestricted license and an investment banking license by the same FSC. Let me remind the House who conducted and how was due diligence. You must do due diligence. How was due diligence done on Mr. Sobrino? Well, done by eye contact. I quote the former Deputy Prime Minister Ivan Kolendavilou, who said, lawyer, who said, what is all this nonsense? He said, avoir regardé dans les yeux de M. Sobrino, je peux dire que ce dernier est crédible. That is why I said we don't have to do due diligence, just get this man to come and look at the other prospective investor. This is what he meant. And he's trying to give us lessons. How can a supposedly, allegedly eminent lawyer says his due diligence. I look at his face as you know he's innocent. Alvaro Sobrino was issued an investment banking license after those procedures had been transferred from the Bank of Mauritius to the FSC. Now, it is important to realize in what circumstances were these amendments made? And why were they made? I'll tell you why. Because the then governor of the Bank of Mauritius, Mr. Bassantrai, flatly refused to give Mr. Sobrino an investment banking license in spite of the pressure being put on him. He refused. The Banking Act was amended in catimini to remove investment banking business from the definition of a bank so that only the Financial Services Commission thereafter regulated this business. Consequently, amendments were brought to the Financial Services Act. All this to grant Mr. Sobrino his license that the governor of the bank then thought he should not be given such a license. And remember how in 2017, on a Saturday morning, a special meeting of the board of the FSC was called, chaired by Mr. late Devan Raj. It was convened to put pressure to amend the law. I must say to the House, perhaps some people don't know it, the then Solicitor General, Mr. Diren Debi, he was the vice chairperson of the board. He refused to be associated with the said maneuvers, in spite of all the pressures. Further to the Saturday morning meeting, when he said he will not agree, Mr. Debi and 3 other members of the board resigned from their position. They didn't look at the money, the premium, whatever. They resigned from their positions at the FSC. And I'll tell you who the 3 others were. Mr. Warda Dulma Ibrahim, Mr. Roy Ramlakan, and Mr. Jacques Lichon. These are the men of principles who resisted pressure. You know, recently, when the IMF were here, the people from the IMF were here, they were asking us, but when the finance minister was manipulating figures, we can't understand, this is a democratic state. Why everybody kept quiet? I don't want to say the words because the lady is here. But they don't have the guts. They kept quiet, afraid. I always say, you know what Shakespeare said? The coward's die many deaths before the death. The valiant taste of death but once. This is what we should do. We pray every day. We are a nation who prays. But this is what we should do. We should not be afraid. We must do what must be done. The Sobrino affair, Madam Speaker, involves shady dealings, investment in property schemes to the tune, believe it or not, of 52 million, and the purchase of luxury cars for millions of rupees. The same Mr. Sobrino was authorized to purchase 131 villas and apartments worth more than 1 billion rupees at Balaclava under the vente en état futur d'achèvement. Yeah, VEFA. The above demonstrates to what extent in the 2014 and 24 days money laundered through property development and property acquisition was welcome as if foreign investment was going up. And if you look at the list, we are looking at the list, you will see who are the people who got flats and apartments. They will have to respond. Don't think we've forgotten. It's taking time, but they will have to explain all this. It's coming, I can tell you. Another example is the Silver Bank saga. Let me mention the troubling circumstances under which a banking license was issued to Silver Bank, formerly I think it was called Banyan Tree Bank, in November 2021. First, we should ask a pertinent question. Who is it who recommended Mr. Pratik Gupta to take over Banyan Tree? Who was it? Where did it come from? Nowhere? There was reasonable cause to believe that the capital of Silver Bank was potentially impaired and that its directors could have engaged in practices detrimental to the interests of its depositors. Silverbank had absolutely no track record. Its ultimate beneficial owners had no banking experience. And the bank, which is currently under investigation by the Financial Crimes Commissions, deceived thousands of Mauritians. I see some people are protesting. They should go and protest to these people who allow this to happen. We're putting order in these things. Government-related, this is unbelievable, but I will tell you. Government, before Silverbank came into the picture, a circular was issued by the Ministry of Finance, the previous regime, requesting government-related entities to invest their surplus cash into treasury certificates because they are much safer. Issued from the Ministry of Finance, and the Bank of Mauritius was involved, to put the money where it is safer. This very ministry then purposely, to create a misleading enhancement of the bank's balance, they decided to issue a circular, this very government, to tell the related entities, that is the municipal council, sugar insurance fund, I think national insurance company and all that. They invested a total of 3.55 billion rupees in the Silverbank. They had issued the circular. They contradicted themselves. Issued another circular now. Put the money in Silverbank. And look at the result. Who is losing money now? Yes. But they thought this country belongs to them. They can do what they want. Huh? Yeah. This was, as I said, purposely done to create the misleading impression that of the enhancing the balance of the bank's balance sheet. This decision to invest so much money in such a bank was outright incompetence bordering on criminal offense. They had a duty to safeguard public funds. I hope this Creole, speaking Creole in Parliament, will come earlier even. Because many people don't understand. In Creole, I could have said it better. C'est un criminel qui prend la monnaie des peuples, il fait investir dans la banque qu'ils ont connu pour couler du bois. C'est ça qu'ils veulent faire. What is even more unexplainable, as I said, they issued the circular, a clear dereliction of duty in safeguarding public funds. The serious mismanagement, Madam Speaker, fictitious guarantees, recklessness pertaining to loan reimbursement led to the toxicity of the loan portfolio of Silverbank. This is how they operated. And we all know what happened. We are sitting on it now. Silverbank was placed under conservatorship in February 2024. A monthly conservatorship of 3.5 million rupees was payable to whom? Grant Thornton Advisory Services. And who was that director? The close friend of the former Prime Minister. Close friend. Outside, he was making a campaign against Muslims. And yet his close friend was this man. And we all know his name, Sattar Haji Abdullah. Haji on all things. I need to add, Madam Speaker, that during this process, several potential investors expressed interest to acquire Silverbank. This happened even when Mr. Ramastanan was governor of the bank. But then they all, one by one, when they saw what was on the paper, on the balance sheet, they disappeared. Only one prospective investor submitted an application. But his application, I can say, I think, he wanted to get the bank, but not take the debts. How can we do that? He was asking for more time. The bank, in the interest of depositors and creditors, the Bank of Mauritius has been engaging with the prospective investor. and granted several extensions to each successive deadline. There were deadlines, again deadline, to enable them to see what they can do. On March 30th of this year, the Bank of Mauritius, that was the last deadline, did not receive any application. After careful consideration of all the facts and information available, the board of the Bank of Mauritius on the 30th of March of this year decided to terminate the conservatorship of Silverbank. Mr. Hulse Biltu of KPMG Mauritius has now been appointed as receiver of Silverbank. Madam Speaker, the scandals I referred to earlier, gave a severe blow to our hard-earned reputation as a credible international financial center. They illustrate the kind of occult interests and influences which were encouraged and provided by the previous regime. I think it's more than criminal negligence. It's criminal intent. There's criminal intent there. It's more serious. It's not just negligence. It's intent. In due time, these people, I say again, will have to answer for the misdeeds. This is one of the reasons we are coming up with a national crime agency. You will see the difference very soon. A lot of criticisms have also been levied against at the level of the EDB. They say undue delay in processing applications for investment in Mauritius. So many millions are waiting. There is a due process they follow. Maybe we could do it a bit quicker, I don't know. But let me give the House a concrete example to show how it is extremely important to have a thorough prior check and assessment. Quite recently, a prospective investor came with a project worth nearly 5 billion rupees. When they investigated, he was getting all sorts of nervousness. He was trying to contact people in high office. But they found out it is a blatant case of laundering dirty money, and it was refused, turned down. But it took a long time to investigate. It is ironical, Madam Speaker, that the Honourable Leader of the Opposition reminded the House that justice denied is justice delayed. But that was the philosophy of the previous government, which cost the taxpayers billions of rupees. Not millions, billions. Remember the Betamax case? It has cost the country 5.6 billion rupees, taxpayers' money. That is everybody who is here, their money, which has gone down the drain because of the incompetency and the criminal negligence. You know, in that case, in terms of legal costs, the State Trading Corporation paid Mr. Ravin Chetty nearly 20 million rupees. What do we do with these people? What should we do with these people? The delays referred to by the Honourable Leader of the Opposition are the result of long-standing structural weaknesses by the former regime. And everywhere, sir, even in the police. That is why we are bringing new laws. We cannot afford to have these structural weaknesses everywhere. And then we have, you know what happens? Look at the former Commissioner of Police. He was called by the FCC. He had already prepared and don't a statement. He even went and saw it in court, an affidavit. Before the questions were asked, he knew what questions were going to be asked. How does this happen? Leakage. These worms who are leaking information, they will have to answer in the future. I must tell you this. We have taken decisive action, and we are going to do more. The administrative penalty regulations pending since 2022 were finalized last year. They now allow authorities to impose sanctions directly without lengthy court procedures. Madam Speaker, Honourable Duval described these reforms as cosmetic. This is not only inaccurate, but it undermines the extensive work carried on by our institutions. These amendments are the results of work undertaken by professionals from the Attorney General's Office, the Bank of Mauritius, and the Financial Crimes Commission in consultation with other competent authorities. The amendments take into consideration the findings of the National Risk Assessment as well as the independent assessment of our AML CFT CPF framework and are supported by detailed mapping against FATF requirements. Therefore, it is not, with all due respect, it is not cosmetic. It is a serious, technical, and coordinated reform effort. Honorable Juval also raised concerns regarding the motor vehicle sector, and has suggested, like many others do, that the framework is inadequate in addressing the associated risk. Let me clarify that the AML CFT CPF framework is complex and it is evolving, requiring a risk-based and carefully calibrated approach. Any reforms must be properly analyzed to avoid, because you can get unintended consequences on economic activity of citizens. It is precisely in this context that the Ministry of Financial Services and Economic Planning is currently undertaking a typology report on motor vehicle trade. This exercise will enable a comprehensive assessment of money laundering risk and typologies associated with the sector, determine appropriate thresholds for cash transactions, and identify robust safeguards to prevent abuse for money laundering purposes. In this regard, a typology report on motor vehicle trade is underway, and it will assess risk, determine appropriate cash thresholds, and identify safeguards. However, we're not just saying this, Madam Speaker. Last year, the government introduced regulations requiring traceable payment methods with only a limited cash deposit of 20,000 rupees. Let me reiterate, maybe 20,000 is a bit low, but we are looking at this. Let me reiterate the statistics on enforcement actions by the Financial Crimes Commission in relation to motor vehicles related money laundering activity. A total of 86 attachment and seizures orders have been issued. Over 300 vehicles have been seized, including luxury vehicles. The estimated value of the vehicle seized exceeds 280 million rupees. Several car rental companies have been identified and are being investigated as vehicles for laundering criminal proceeds. These are real actions, and they're delivering real results. We must remain steadfast, Madam Speaker, and forward-looking, driving the reforms necessary to safeguard and strengthen the AML CFT CPF framework. It is, in a way, a very clear national imperative. To those engaged in doom-mongering and unwarranted criticism, let me be clear. Our focus remains firmly on implementing the reforms, upholding transparency and accountability, and successfully navigating the forthcoming mutual evaluation exercise. There are people who actually want us to be downgraded, to go on the grades. We must be more patriotic. You know, the other day I met a lady from abroad, from India actually. You know what she said to me? "I'm very sorry for you, your Prime Minister." I said, "Why?" He said, "But I see very few patriots in this country. Everybody is looking for something. Where is patriotism? We have to unite the country and be patriots." As I repeatedly said during the campaign, nous pouvons mettre l'autre côté des autres, quoi moi? Nous pouvons mettre ça l'autre là. Let me conclude by acknowledging the collective efforts of all the institutions engaged in this national endeavor, Madam Speaker, as well as the continued collaboration of the private sector and our international partners. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Honourable Ministers, Mr. Subron.
Madam Speaker, first let me express my appreciation to the Minister, the Attorney General, and all the other ministers who were part of the Interministerial Committee who spearheaded this milestone bundle of legislation. Various colleagues, ministers, and members of the government made significant contribution during the debate on this bill. My thanks go to them too. Some elaborated on the technical and institutional dimensions, while others explain the further needs for more transparent and efficient financial sector. I will focus my intervention on a more philosophical dimension and a global historical context for this bill to be laid on the table of this Assembly. Let me start by addressing some issues raised by the opposition parties. The leader of the opposition has essentially said, primo, that the measures contained in this bill are fine, but the problem will lie in the implementation. My colleagues in government have already responded to this argument. Segundo, the leader of the opposition went on and said, let me quote the answer, Madam Speaker. The leader of the opposition said, on novel offences, Clause 8 amends the Environment Act 2024, introducing for the first time the offence of ecocide with penalties up to 10 years of penal servitude. Madam Speaker, said the leader of the opposition, may the House be informed as to why this clause has been introduced in this bill. He adds, I sincerely think that this amendment has nothing to do with AML-CFT. To this statement, my honourable colleague and comrade, Honourable Eto'oya, certainly one of the most leftist-leaning members of this Assembly, spontaneously responded to the leader of the opposition, Bisain Lia Mpe, Honourable Eto'oya said. As a long-standing journalist with international experiences, he depicted instantly the blunder of the leader of the opposition. I will come back later to this erroneous statement made by the leader of the opposition when he stated that ecocide and environmental crimes are not part of AML-CFT framework. Tertio, the leader of the opposition then added that he sincerely believes that the amendment on Environment Act on ecocide has been put in this bill to please a party in the government. Madam Speaker, one does not have to climb on the top roof of SunTrust building to know that the leader of the opposition was referring to my party, Résistance et Alternative, who is the most ecologically inclined party in this government. Well, on this statement too, the leader of the opposition has exposed his slender understanding of politics and its dynamics, especially in this global era. As for the other member of the opposition, who is still here, glad he's here, Honourable Duval, his stand can be summarized as follows. The present legal framework to tackle money laundering are already here, and this legislation is cosmetic and have been introduced to please AML-CFT. He is wrong too. To say the least, this posture certainly exposes his political dizziness of not understanding that one of the major amendments on ecocide would leap Mauritius forward amongst the few first countries in the world to be introducing ecocide as a major crime connected to financial crime. This leaping section have not ever existed before in our statutes, and its introduction is certainly not cosmetic, nor has been made to please this time AML-CFT. Madam Speaker, fundamental laws in society are not made to please X or Y. Those in opposition who may have made laws to please within this constricted vision of pleasing somebody cannot understand that fundamental local laws, domestic laws, are the product of social struggles, in this case of global social struggles, establishing new balance of forces, ethics, and paradigm shift. Of course, those who have never been part of or who are disconnected of social struggles, be it locally or globally, will never understand the dialectics of social struggle and legislative enactments. Major struggles have led to major law changes in the history of humanity. In colonial slavery times, the abolitionist movement has been instrumental to bring laws to abolish slave trades and systems. The liberation and pro-independence struggles triggered fundamental laws to enact self-determination, especially in the global south. Global solidarity actions reinforced the local struggle in South Africa to end apartheid legal framework. Workers' struggle gave birth to critical ILO conventions. This piece of legislation, to be precise, this package of legislative amendments are the direct product of global struggles, emerging at the end of the last century and beginning this century, and the beginning of this century. It is the product of the struggle of global movements for social, economic, and environmental justice in the era of limitless global capitalism dominated by net worth billionaires. The global justice movement includes many organizations and networks. I will mention a few. Global Tax Justice Movement, Alternative World Social Forums, Our World is Not for Sale, ATTAC, Third World Network, Oxfam, Friend of the Earth, Stop Genocide, Climate and Capitalism, just to mention a few. In these global networks and struggle, my party, Resistance Alternative, and other movements in which we are part of, and myself, as an activist in various global justice movements, have played an important role. Madam Speaker, these global justice movements are in reality the genesis of what we are debating today. Honorable Leader of the Opposition, this law is not meant to please my party, but my party as part of the global justice movement contributed to shape the new laws to better protect the people and the planet, which are being robbed by global capitalism. Yes, madam, robbed, and I mean it. Let me refer to the latest report of the prestigious Oxfam International, just published on the 2nd April 2026. The amount of untaxed wealth hidden offshore by the richest 0.1% exceeds the entire wealth of the poorest half of humanity, 4.1 billion people, reveals new Oxfam's analysis published ahead of the 10th anniversary of the Panama Papers. The findings show that a decade later, the super rich continue to explore offshore systems to evade taxes and conceal assets, highlighting the urgent need for coordinated international action to tax extreme wealth. Oxfam estimates that 3.55 trillion in untaxed wealth are stashed offshore in tax havens and unreported accounts in 2024. This sum exceeds the GDP of France and is more than twice the GDP of the world's 44 least developed countries. The richest 0.1% hold approximately 80% of all untaxed offshore wealth, or around $2.84 trillion. Within this tiny group, the ultra-wealthiest 0.01% hold roughly $1.77 trillion. This isn't just about clever accounting. It is about power and impunity. When millionaires and billionaires stash trillions of dollars in offshore tax haven, they place themselves above the obligation that binds the rest of society. The consequences are predictable as they are devastating. We see our public hospitals, schools starved of funds, of social fabric shredded by rising inequality, or ordinary people forced to shoulder the cost of a system rigged to enrich a tiny few. Madam Speaker, it is because this cruel tendency of global capitalism that global social and ecological justice movement are fought for the regulation of offshore financial centers for more than 40 years. The AML-CFT and the FATF arose from these socio-political dynamics, which have had to be taken on board by the political and ruling elite in many Western countries. So are some of the amendments being presently brought to this House. I will now deal specifically on three major dimensions of the emerging legal frameworks in connection with offshore financial sector and its impacts in Mauritius. First, taxes. Second, secrecy. And third, the environmental crime and ecocide. Taxes. To curb tax evasion and tax avoidance, the global minimum tax of 15% adopted by the OECD has been incorporated in Mauritian law last year in the form of Qualified Domestic Minimum Top-Up Tax, QDMTT. As a matter of fact, the global minimum tax is itself the product of long-standing struggle of global justice movement. The global justice movement, which includes organizations as state as ATTAC, Association for the Taxation of Financial Transactions and for Citizens Action, and Global Alliance for Tax Justice, has been fighting to end the race to the bottom in terms of taxation. After the global minimum tax, the global justice movement are now currently campaigning for a UN tax convention, which would move tax rule making it more inclusive platform where developing nations have an equal vote. They are also fighting for a broad financial transaction tax over the global minimum tax. And like the GMT, which target corporate profits, the FTT will target the volume of financial trades to curb market speculation and raise funds for global public goods. Madam Speaker, maybe one of these days we will see future legislation to be debated in this House on UN tax convention, on financial transaction tax, not to please anybody, but as the direct product of the relations between global social struggle and domestic law enactment. On secrecy, the fight against tax haven secrecy has been led by a coalition of whistleblowers, investigative journalists, non-governmental organizations who have worked for decades to expose the hidden financial system of world elite. These included the global NGO like Transparency International and many media, such as the International Consortium of Investigative Journalists, who have been the spearheads of the global social movement against the secrecy that underpins many offshore financial sectors. 10 years ago, the Panama Papers were leaked to the world. This caused offshore finance to come under mounting international scrutiny. The Panama Papers exposed how shell companies with complex corporate structures use secrecy to launder money and avoid paying taxes. The secrecy of the Mauritian offshore is its lack of supervision were notorious. This contributed for Mauritius to be put on the grey list. Mauritius took several steps, including abolishing GBC2 licenses and replacing them with a more regulated authorized company regime. The reform focused on implementing stricter substance requirements, requiring companies to have a physical presence and real activity in Mauritius. In parallel, the law on ultimate beneficial order in Mauritius had evolved significantly, shifting from light disclosure to strict transparency to meet international compliance standards of the FATF. In 2024, the Registrar of Companies was tasked to maintain a largely confidential beneficial ownership accessible only to competent authorities. With the amendment proposed today in the Companies Act, the primary difference lies in moving from simple threshold-based percentage, 25%, to a broader natural person and control focus that aligns with international FATF standard. Thus, the amendment will expand control definition. The new framework uses cascade approach, looking beyond simple ownership percentage to include control via voting rights or other means. It attributes default senior management. If no natural person is identified through ownership or control, the senior managing official must be identified as the beneficial ownership. Madam Speaker, these are real changes, not cosmetic one, as claimed by the opposition. Let me come now to the environmental crimes and ecocide. Madam Speaker, let me now, that is the introduction of environmental crime and ecocide as part of anti-money laundering framework. This is a recent and accelerated development. This again does not fall from the sky. It is due to the persistent global socio-ecological justice movement campaign after clear links have been established between environmental crimes and companies operating the offshore sectors. Many organizations such as Stop Ecocide International, Transparency International, Global Witness are part of them. Historically, money laundering was viewed as victimless financial crime. The global justice movement reframed it by highlighting how illicit financial flows drain resources from developing nations. This advocacy led to the inclusion of grand corruption and environmental crime as predicate offenses for money laundering. The global justice movement also pushed for the UNCAC, United Nations Convention Against Corruption, to ensure that AML law are not just stopping the flow of money, but returning the stolen assets to their rightful citizens. The intersection of environmental crimes, ecocide, and reparation represent a major shift from traditional human-centered justice to a more ecocentric model that treats the environment as a victim on its own right. The inclusion of ecocide in law means criminalizing the mass destruction of ecosystems, thus essentially treating environmental devastation with the same gravity as genocide or war crimes. I won't go into the definition because of time. Madam Speaker, let me say, in this era of climate crisis, extinction of biodiversity, destructive, extractivist-driven economy, this amendment reflects the level of consciousness attained by the people of the planet and their movement. It has become a matter of survival. By adding ecocide in our statute book, Mauritius becomes a pioneer country in socio-ecological justice and custodianship. I think this section on ecocide and environmental crimes marks the biggest leap in Mauritian environmental law since independence. The European Union has already moved to criminalize environmental crime, and countries like Belgium, France, Vietnam, Chile has already incorporated ecocide and ecocide-like legislation in their domestic law. For the leader of the opposition who is not here, but who was sincerely wondering why the inclusion of this amendment in our law for FATF compliance purpose, I will humbly request him to read Lia Impé, the FATF report, Money Laundering from Under Environmental Crime, June 2021. I will recommend to Lia Impé the new Environmental Crime Directive 2024-1203. These two documents will surely enlighten him on the issue. Let me add that the amendments we are bringing to this House, beside making ecocide a crime in our law, punishable by imprisonment, criminalizes non-compliance to environmental protection fee. It extends the provision of assets recovery to environmental crime and ecocide, and for the first time ever, introduce reparation in our law for ecocide. The new section 135B provides for non-criminal penalties or measures. The new section 135C provides for recovery of expenses. Madam Speaker, we the people of Mauritius, who live the first marine ecocide of our history through the oil spill arising through Wakasho's shipwreck, should applaud this amendment being brought to the Environment Act. I'm sure if the previous government could be brought to court under this new law, it would have surely be condemned for ecocide. The wanton, the reckless disregard for environmental consequences during the first 12 days of Wakasho's shipwreck would have been sufficient to be condemned, for them to be condemned for ecocide. In any case, this law would have also opened the door for massive reparation for the prejudice caused to the people of Maibu and Southeast Coast by the companies and agencies who caused this ecocidal spread of the Mare Noire. The oil spill of the 12 days of reckless disregard for environmental consequences. Having been on the waterfront, I know what we are talking about. Madam Speaker, this bill gives hopes to humanity and Mauritius. It shows that as global capitalism unraveled, it also generates its own contradictions. That is the rise of global people's movement for social justice and ecological justice. It generates the very seeds to challenge its dominance and build new world which Resistance Égale Alternative, my party, and me, I'm proud to be in this House and to vote for this bill. Today is a historic of the changing sitting arrangements. It's a historical day because of these pieces of legislation that we will be enacting in a few moments. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Yes, let me tell everybody, I've got Honorable Boulel, Honorable Bagwan, and Honorable Mohammed, ministers, who will have to speak, and then Ms. Minister will be making her winding up speech. I would really appreciate if you could really respect the time. Because after that, we have to do committee stage. I have a statement from a minister. We're not home yet. Please, Honorable Boulel. I didn't want to embarrass you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. The joy of having to intervene after two eloquent speakers, Prime Minister and our good friend, the Minister of Social Security, is that there's not much left for me to say, except that I will stick to the time allotted to me. Now, it reminds me, I'm not saying that I will be like a jurisdiction without substance, but I have a few things to say. Now, the days, Madam Speaker, of preferences and rent-seeking are over. Financial services sectors competitive. As a responsible government, acting as an enabler, a facilitator of a dynamic sector, which is brain gain for young, ambitious graduates, we constantly have to re-engineer the sector. And to gain competitive and comparative advantages, our jurisdiction has to be neat, clean, and a jurisdiction of substance. Singapore, Luxembourg, Malta, Liechtenstein, Bermuda, Dubai, Isle of Man, just to name a few, would not hesitate to ruffle our feathers to have a competitive edge. Make Mauritius our preferred destination is our mantra. And the financial services thrive in the name of effectiveness, transparency, and accountability. The Honourable Minister responsible for financial services and economic planning wasted no time to move the 24 amendments of the bill as recommended by the Ministerial Committee, co-chaired by herself and the Attorney General. And the amendments were moved 24 hours after the Bank of Mauritius announced the termination of the conservatorship of Silver Bank. And the bill is the jurisdiction, the bill is the gatekeeper of our jurisdiction. As a jurisdiction of substance, we should not be caught off the cuff. I'm not going to say with our pants down, but certainly not off the cuff. Our Financial Services Center has taken the rung of the FATF ladder and within a year, as Prime Minister has stated, has gained 8 places. The Chief Executive of Financial Services Commission is confident our jurisdiction would pass the ISAMLAG test with flying colors. May I remind the House, Mauritius was placed on the FATF grey list and black list of EU in February 2020. And on the Global Financial Index, Mauritius went on a precipitous fall from 65 to 89th place. Why? Because MSM-led regime was a laundromat for criminals to wash, rinse, dry, and spin dry dirty money. The minister, rightly so, has to be congratulated because she conveyed strong signals in relation to 1, know your client, and customer due diligence is the premium of the sector. 2, in relation to suspicious transaction reporting. 3rd, application of the law to the core. 4th, an open and resilient jurisdiction. 5, confidence, and integrity. I would also like to draw attention to alleged online attractive portfolio to lure investors. And no one, Madam Speaker, should be impervious or sensitive to change, especially to fundamental changes. In 2019, and I heard a good colleague, the Minister of Social Security, talking of ecocide. In 2019, the Rome Statute was amended to make ecocide an international crime, but the previous regime never did. The amendment brought to the Environment Act through the bill is a testimony of a firm commitment neither to dither nor to delay. And the bill makes provision for scrutiny of cooperative enterprises. A pillar of democracy, that's what cooperatives are. Equality, equity, unfortunately has been used as a conduit for criminal activities by cronies of the MSM. The Vacuum Multipurpose Cooperative Society scandal was a pillar of big financial mess. Almost 400 million rupees was siphoned. It's broad daylight robbery by cronies of the MSM. MSM-led regime was eternally in collusion with Mac Mafia, Madam Speaker. And Mac Mafia operates all over, and especially in real estate. Unexplained wealth from dirty money has been invested in Dubai. The criminals have to be answerable to unexplained wealth order. Prime Minister has said it. Everybody has to enforce it, and it has to happen. They cannot get away with murder. Government has taken the right decision to call a forensic audit of Silver Bank's past transaction. The various fraudulent practices which occurred with the connivance of persons within the bank and outside have been exposed. Silver Bank was run by banksters and not by bankers, anointed by the former Minister of Finance with the blessings of his leader. The internal auditor sounded the alarm in relation to illicit activities was threatened. Madam Speaker, the sing-song of Pack and Blister, Silver Bank, MIC, Alvaro Sobrino should not simply be a lullaby. Sobrino, as Prime Minister stated, was responsible for many illicit activities, but he was also responsible for a near constitutional crisis which provoked the departure of a president in 2018. And of course, as has been stated by Prime Minister, he got a certificate of character from the then DPM when the latter looked him in the eyes. Prime Minister has consolidated democracy, and there is no prize for it. The demarcation line between democratic institutions are wide, and with due respect, both prosecution and judiciary should know that time is of an essence. Government is government, but Parliament is supreme, and an important bill is being moved. Parliament so decides. The nation does not want to be packed with blisters over delays while the guilty party is enjoying armchair comfortability in Maradiva Hotel, a symbol of fraudulent practices. Madam Speaker, there have been complaints made over the rigidity of the bill by some operators. Yes, indeed, and rightly so, if not our competitors and even NGO would go for our jugular. And that was to some extent stated by our colleague, the Minister of Social Security. Oxfam staged a protest against Mauritius at an OAU conference in March 2014, held in Abuja, following the report submitted by Thabo Mbeki as chair of the High Panel on illicit financial flows. And I had to stand for our friend, the then Minister of Finance, I think it was Xavier Duval, and I had to rebut and highlighted the merits of our jurisdiction as a clean, neat, and low-tax jurisdiction of substance. The name of the game under the previous regime was opacity. Pockets first, country last. FATF judged Mauritius to have a low or moderate effectiveness across the 11 immediate outcomes. The mutual evaluation found that Mauritius was largely fully compliant on 14 of the 40 Financial Action Task Force recommendations, while 26 recommendations were rated as partially or non-compliant. The keyword, Madam Speaker, is effectiveness. FATF revised methodology places a much strong emphasis on measurable effectiveness, not only whether laws exist, but whether they deliver concrete results. And FIU has reporting obligation. The legislative amendments in 2020 enforce stricter reporting, requiring reporting persons or auditors to submit requested information to the Financial Intelligence Unit within 15 days. But under the previous regime, it was hardly enforced. Our government, through the Minister of Financial Services and Economic Planning, has said it loud and clear. Without fear, favor, or prejudice, all suspicious related transactions have to be reported. To be a forward-looking government has finalized the National Anti-Money Laundering, Combating Financing Terrorism Strategy for 2026-2029. The accompanying action plan assigns clear responsibilities to each institution and ensures preparedness for the 2027 mutual evaluation. This approach was recognized and supported during ISAMLAG Executive Secretary's high-level mission in July 2025. A comprehensive technical compliance assessment was conducted in 2025 using the revised FATF methodology to identify legislative gaps, particularly in relation to the 12 recommendations leading to the introduction of the Anti-Money Laundering, Combating Financing Terrorism, and the Conversion, Proliferation, financing, countering proliferation financing, miscellaneous bill to ensure continued alignment with international standards. Preparation for the 2027 mutual evaluation are well underway. These reforms are not being pursued for the sake of only an assessment. They're essential to safeguard the integrity of our financial system, protect Mauritius' reputation, and ensure continued investor confidence. Madam Speaker, our status as a trusted international financial center must be preserved through collective effort by government, regulators, private sector, and civil society. This bill reaffirms our collective determination to deny criminals the opportunity to exploit Mauritius, to recover illicit gains, and to preserve the integrity of our institution. It confronts contemporary threats, including proliferation financing and virtual assets, while preserving space for legitimate economic and charitable activity. Madam Speaker, in the light of climate of uncertainty in the Middle East, it's an opportunity which is knocking for our jurisdiction. And we have to act without fear or prejudice to ensure that we attract investors, to widen the circle of opportunities in Mauritius, and to make our jurisdiction a prime jurisdiction. The amendments in relation to the bill speak volume of opportunities which are knocking, and I thank the Honourable Minister. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for respecting the time. Thank you very much. Honourable Minister of Environment.
Thank
Will
you,
you also keep an eye on the time?
I'll try my
You
best.
will also keep an eye.
Everybody. Madame la Présidente, cette anti-money laundering, combating the financing of terrorism and countering proliferation financing, miscellaneous bill, est une nécessité absolue pour le pays et il n'y a pas de temps à perdre. Je voudrais d'emblée féliciter mes collègues, l'honorable ministre des Services financiers et l'honorable attorney général et leur équipe respective pour le travail abattu pour préparer ce projet de loi, qui vise à mettre toutes les lois réagissant à notre système financier en diapason avec les nouvelles normes internationales. Ce qui a été dit déjà. Une nécessité parce que les dérives et les magouilles sous l'Ancien Régime ne se sont jamais de en parler. On ternit la réputation de notre centre financier et nous nous sommes retrouvés sur le banc des accusés. Ce projet de loi vise avant tout, Madame la Présidente, à redonner confiance en nos institutions financières et bancaires et surtout à minimiser les risques d'abus et les dérives. Un système financier, Madame la Présidente, est un peu comme le passeport d'un pays. À quoi bon d'avoir un passeport superbement imprimé, mais qui n'est reconnu que par une petite poignée d'États? Un passeport trouve sa légitimité quand il est internationalement reconnu, accepté et permet aux détenteurs de ce document de voyager librement aux quatre coins du monde. Et c'est dans l'acceptation de ce passeport que la souveraineté d'un État est reconnue. Et cette souveraineté, comme le passeport, n'a aucun sens en l'absence de réciprocité. En effet, Madame la Présidente, la souveraineté et la réciprocité sont les deux piliers fondamentaux de nos relations internationales du droit. Un demi-siècle de cela, ce principe était adéquat, suffisant pour être accepté dans le Conseil des Nations. Mais les choses ont évolué drastiquement avec la mondialisation, la globalisation et la financiarisation de l'économie. Le commerce international a atteint en 2024 33 000 milliards de dollars, représentant 60% du PIB mondial. Et ce commerce mondial dépend énormément des services financiers, devenus eux-mêmes un élément très important des exportations. Ce vaste mouvement de capitaux à travers le monde comporte évidemment des risques et les fraudeurs sont nombreux quand les contrôles sont insuffisants. L'offshore, avec ses sociétés d'écran et ses montages complexes, est devenu un terrain de prédilection pour les white-collar criminals.
Prédilection.
Pardon?
Prédilection.
Oui, prédilection. C'est ainsi que notre petite île était devenue une plaque tournante sur le précédent régime. Des Panama Papers en 2016 aux Pandora Papers en 2021, en passant par des Mauritian Leaks ou les autres Paradise Papers, la réputation de notre pays était ternie et le pays s'est retrouvé sur la liste des listes peu honorables. Des impostes, des fenêtres et des égouts permettaient ces transactions douteuses, avec la complicité tacite des institutions réduites à des robustins complaisants. Les autorités dites compétentes fermaient les yeux, pire, encourageaient ces activités illicites, éclaboussant même des personnalités au plus haut sommet de l'État mauricien. Mes collègues et moi-même, nous avons posé pas mal de questions avant l'élection générale, et nous savions comment il y avait ce loudspeaker qui nous empêchait d'avoir des réponses. Le pays lui-même était devenu une silver bank, une banyan tree bank, un rogue state. Le smoking gun, Madame la Présidente, était entre les mains des grosses comptes du MFM. Il faut impérativement mettre de l'ordre dans nos lois, réagissant les secteurs bancaires et financiers, pour se mettre enfin en conformité avec les normes internationales, pour que le pays ne soit plus sur la touche, pour que notre souveraineté, sur tous les plans, bénéficie d'une réciprocité des États et de nos partenaires pour que notre passeport financier devienne réellement un passe-partout. C'est donc ce pilier fondamental dans nos échanges internationaux que ce projet de loi vient consolider. Ce projet de loi est en substance un texte qui permettra à Maurice de se conformer à la dernière série de normes internationales établies par le GAFI. Par l'adoption de ce projet de loi, nous renforcerons notre cadre juridique afin d'éviter que notre pays ne soit inscrit sur la liste grise de juridiction du GAFI. Madame la Présidente, bien que la République de Maurice dispose jusqu'à 2027 pour conformer aux 40 recommandations formulées par le GAFI, notre pays fait l'objet d'un suivi étroit et nous avons le devoir de faire de notre mieux et vite pour démontrer des progrès concrets année après année. Il n'est pas nécessaire de rappeler aux membres de cette Assemblée, à nos amis, les dangers liés à un non-respect des recommandations, des conséquences économiques, financières désastreuses et une image écornée pour la République de Maurice. C'est dans ce contexte de tensions géopolitiques et de marge de manœuvre budgétaire limitée, notre pays ne peut tout simplement pas se permettre de prendre le moindre risque de figurer sur cette liste grise. Madame la Présidente, les recommandations du CAFI exigent que les infractions de blanchiment d'argent s'appliquent à un éventail le plus large possible d'infractions. C'est dans ce contexte, le GAFI a explicitement souligné que les crimes environnementaux constituent des infractions graves générant des produits susceptibles d'alimenter des opérations de blanchiment d'argent. Selon le Global Risk Report 2023 du Forum économique mondial, la perte de biodiversité et l'effondrement des écosystèmes figurent parmi les risques mondiaux qui se détériorent le plus rapidement au cours de la prochaine décennie. À l'échelle mondiale, la nature, faible risque et forte rentabilité des crimes environnementaux en fait une source de revenus lucrative pour les criminels. Ne croyez pas, Madame la Présidente, que nous sommes à l'abri de telles pratiques. En effet, alors que certains pensent encore que le blanchiment d'argent est une affaire abstraite de chiffres et de comptes offshore, une réalité circule dans les tuyaux en PVC, remplis d'oiseaux vivants, anesthésiés pour tromper la vigilance. Oui, ces serins siffleurs jusqu'à 75 par tube PVC échangés contre la drogue, au cœur d'un trafic organisé entre Maurice et la Réunion. Derrière chaque oiseau, c'est un système criminel qui prospère, qui blanchit et qui corrompt. D'ailleurs, ce trafic où un oiseau peut valoir plus de 18 000 a été largement abordé durant le séminaire franco-mauricien relatif à la lutte transnationale contre les atteintes à l'environnement, tenu à l'île Sœur au début du mois, et auquel a participé la police de l'environnement et d'autres parties prenantes mauriciennes. Ce trafic n'est pas marginal. Il est le symptôme d'un crime organisé, inventif, cynique, capable de transformer la biodiversité en monnaie d'échange. Alors oui, Madame la Présidente, cette loi doit frapper fort. Elle doit remonter les filières, assécher les flux financiers et briser les complicités. D'ailleurs, les rapports des Nations Unies placent désormais les revenus issus des crimes environnementaux au même niveau que ceux provenant d'autres crimes financiers graves. À travers ce projet de loi, nous prenons des mesures pour que ceux qui tirent profit de la destruction de nos terres, de notre air et de nos mers soient tenus responsables de leurs actes. Il convient de noter que les crimes environnementaux englobent différentes réalités. Ils incluent l'extraction illégale ou le trafic de divers éléments, qu'il s'agisse des ressources naturelles ou de minéraux, de déchets ou encore d'espèces de la faune et de la flore protégées. Ils concernent également des actes susceptibles d'entraîner des dommages graves, étendus ou durables à l'environnement, tels que des marées noires majeures ou des activités nuisibles ou illégales affectant la faune sauvage. Madame la Présidente, pour lutter efficacement contre ces crimes, nous devons renforcer notre arsenal législatif. À cet effet, ce projet de loi introduit des amendements corrélatifs spécifiques aux articles 128 et 135 de l'Environment Protection Act 2024. Dans un premier temps, des nouvelles dispositions seront introduites afin de sanctionner ceux qui se soutiraient délibérément au paiement de la redevance de l'Environmental Protection Fee. Les nouvelles dispositions comprendront notamment la criminalisation de la soumission des fausses déclarations et des informations erronées, l'imposition des sanctions significatives à l'encontre de ceux qui induisent ou tentent d'induire le directeur général de la MRE, une augmentation substantielle de peine pour les contravenants condamnés avec plus d'amende, compris entre 100 000 à 500 000 roupies, et une peine d'emprisonnement pouvant aller jusqu'à 10 ans, et la possibilité de la Cour d'ordonner le paiement d'un montant pouvant atteindre le double de la différence des sommes dues. Madame la Présidente, à la suite des consultations avec le bureau du directeur du Conseil public et celui de l'Attorney General, nous intégrons des nouvelles dispositions à l'Environment Protection Act 2024 relatives à l'écocide. Madam Speaker, our pride as Mauritians, whatever community we belong to, whatever political ideologies, whatever religious beliefs we might have, and whatever our age, is our unique environment. Our environment, our beaches, seas, mountains, fields, trees or birds, is something we all cherish. We all have fond memories of afternoons spent at the seaside, or walks in our forests, or hike up our mountains. As we all know that our environment is fragile, we all remember a few years ago how the Wakasho incident deeply affected all of us. More importantly, it made us realize how vulnerable we all were. The immediate reaction of all Mauritians was then commendable, and still we can't remember the contribution of Resistance and Alternative and all his friends of the Council and others. Across the island, people volunteered their time, and some of us were here, even there, to try to contain the noxious marine noire. Again, this shows how dear the environment is to all of us, Mauritians. Quite a lot of laws in Mauritius do offer protection against all categories of violence against people. Sadly, violence, whether willful or negligent, against our environment is not adequately criminalized. The existing laws, at best, only marginally punish those who harm nature. Existing offences against our environment are not even considered as a crime in our statutes, but only as a misdemeanor. This has to change. This law, creating the crime of ecocide, changes that. The crime, inspired by a growing global movement led by small island nations, is crafted in such a way as to capture all possible harms against nature. There will be no more legal loopholes and no more impunity. It targets unlawful or wanton acts causing severe, widespread, or long-term environmental damage. The punishment is extremely severe. Those found guilty reach a maximum of 10 years imprisonment. Another novelty is that there is no maximum fine. Instead, the fine will be proportionate to the damage caused. The law also provides for remedial action or compensation. The law, Madam Speaker, ensures accountability for environmental destruction, deters against future harm, protects human lives, and aligns our country with the FATF expectations. Lastly, this crime aligns itself with a promise this government made, which prominently feature within the government program 2025-2029 to recognize the importance of our environment and protect it. I'm here focusing on the inclusion of the right of nature within the constitutional and legal frameworks of the Republic of Mauritius. Pending the work of the Constitutional Review Commission, the consequential amendments proposed by the current bill are a step taken toward mainstreaming the rights of nature within our legal fabric, especially by criminalizing ecocide. We, however, recognize that environmental protection duties are shared amongst various institutions. Indeed, technical competences and enforcement duties are shared across various authorities, as described within the 5th schedule of the Environment Act 2024. While the Office of the DPP will lead prosecution of offenders, we are ensuring a whole-of-government approach where technical competences from competent authorities are integrated within our judicial process. We are aware of potential logistical challenges, such as the need for specialized experts to assess environmental damage. These will be duly called upon if the need arises. However, the United Nations Environment Programme advocates technical hurdles should not serve as an excuse for environmental impunity. The planetary crisis requires us to be bold. Madame la Présidente, mais aussi collective, vigilante et citoyenne, c'est précisément le sens du programme Service à l'écologie, qui sera bientôt lancé par mon ministère. Notre ambition est de fédérer à travers toute l'île des écopoles, rassemblement des experts, formateurs, mentors, professionnels, retraités, académiciens, chercheurs et citoyens engagés pour créer un véritable réseau d'alerte, de transmission et d'action sur le terrain, au plus près des réalités. J'appelle donc à chaque citoyen, engageons-nous à faire émerger une société mauricienne lucide, formée, mobilisée, capable de détecter et dénoncer et de protéger. Un pays où chacun, Madame la Présidente, devient gardien de l'environnement et de sa biodiversité. Madame la Présidente, ce projet de loi ne concerne pas uniquement la conformité financière. Il touche à l'âme même de notre État-océan, d'une superficie de 2,3 millions de kilomètres carrés. Il envoie un message clair. Notre capital environnemental n'est pas à vendre. Et les braconniers et les autres criminels qui cherchent à tirer profit de sa destruction ne dormiront plus tranquilles. Madame la Présidente, ce projet de loi est un grand pas pour la mise en conformité de notre système financier, mais un plus grand pas pour la protection de notre capital environnemental. Et c'est ce que je soutiens vivement ce projet qu'a présenté mon collègue.
Merci, Monsieur le Ministre, d'avoir respecté le temps. Honorable Minister for Housing.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Indeed, it is an important piece of legislation, and from the very outset, I also would like to congratulate the Honourable Minister for bringing this piece of legislation to this House. As far as my ministry is concerned, we are to refer to clause 18 of the present bill that talks about the real estate agency authority. And what I would like to address, I am of the view, is of utmost importance. Having listened to everyone, every single person has made a very important contribution to this democratic process. But allow me at the outset to make reference to the interesting exchange that at the time that the Honourable Prime Minister was addressing the House, and in front of him was the Honourable Duval. Mention was made of recordings, audio recordings, and I saw how comforted Honourable Duval was when he said, from a sitting position, all of us heard him, what he said was that he was himself a victim of those recordings. Fact. Very true. The Honourable Prime Minister also talked about the former Commissioner of Police. Once again, I looked at my good friend, Honourable Adrien Duval, and saw the smile on his face, where once again he tried to explain that he has been victim of the acts and doings of certain people at the time. But what shocks me, apart from the fact that I'm saddened that he's not here right now, but what is even more saddening, Madam Speaker, is that he chose knowingly to side with those that were spying on him. Now, what does that show? I fail to understand. I mean, I would have huge difficulties sitting next to those who have championed the cause of spying unlawfully. And that has nothing to do with spying, I can assure you. Because a spy would have been quiet.
This happens, but try and keep it.
Yes.
Try and keep it quiet.
So I fail to understand how he could do that. I mean, I wish he could at some stage explain and tell the people and tell the House how has he put that aside. Because at no time did I hear anyone from the former regime apologize. At no time did I hear the leader of the opposition, with whom he sits shoulder to shoulder, say, sorry that I did not know, but I condemn what was happening. At no time have we heard any member of the MSM condemn the fact that there was such unlawful behavior from those at the very top of our executive in those days. But then we have heard also about the whole issue of Alvaro Sobrino. True. Once again, Honourable Duval, in a sitting position, said, not Asiabaden, I am the one who brought it up. Good for you. And true it is, I did hear him bring it up. True it is that the then leader of the opposition, who was then Xavier Duval, did also question the Prime Minister of the day on that particular issue. There was crossing of swords between the Prime Minister of the day and the leader of the opposition, and there was Honourable Colin Damelou, who was sitting there in a very squared position, feeling so proud of himself. But I remember those days. But then again, how is it that Honourable Duval, not only him, but his whole party sat shoulder to shoulder with those who supported Alvaro Sobrino? How did he stand on the same electoral platform as the person who said, I only get lisier dans lisier, and I gave him a due diligence exercise? How could he do that? How could you forgive? How could you forget so easily? And today you want to take the position, your high moral position of supposedly representing the right side. But you should always choose the right side of history. You should believe in those positions that you adopt. You should believe and act accordingly. But it is sad because my good friend, Adrien Duval, has chosen to forget the moral ground or has a different definition than I have. So, Madam Speaker, to come to this legislation, let me say clause 18. I shall deal with it at the end of my intervention. But let me say, it is necessary to understand how we have arrived at the current state of play in the real estate sector. Back in 2018, a Samlag Mutual Evaluation Report highlighted a very important fact. Let me quote this. I quote, "Mauritius does not have specific legislation requiring real estate agents to be registered. The only requirement is that anyone wishing to operate such a business must obtain a general business registration certificate. With respect to real estate agents, there are no specific measures in place to prevent criminals and their associates from entering the market or from acting as beneficial owners or holding management functions within the sector. The vulnerability rating from the 2019 National Risk Assessment was thus high in bold, underlined. And what did the government of the day then do? They came up, despite the shortcomings identified in Samlag, no credible action was undertaken by the then government across all sectors. As a result, we were eventually placed on the FATF grey list and also on the EU blacklist. This is what the Honourable Leader of the Opposition pretends not to remember or not to know. He puts that aside as though it never happened. He tries to rewrite history. But this is the truth, and he cannot run away from that truth. So the Real Estate Agency Authority Act was enacted in 2020 to establish a dedicated authority for real estate, the real estate sector, with a view to both regulating the activities of the real estate agents, including developers and promoters. And I'll try to explain as I go along why this is of utmost importance. So, what did the government do? And I here have a document which is the Proclamation number 10 of 2020. So I have it here, signed by the President of the Republic of the day. So the Act comes into force as from the 1st of November 2020. But sections 1 to 11 is proclaimed, 17, 20, 33, 41, 43, 45 and 47 proclaimed, but the other sections of the law are not proclaimed. And therein I start putting questions. Why is it that you create an authority? The whole idea is to clean up the sector, to ensure that we comply with what we have to comply with, to ensure that there is monitoring, that there is surveillance, supervision, that we comply with the law, that we are a clean jurisdiction, at least in that particular sector. But why is it that the government of the day decides not to proclaim those sectors? And what are those sections of the bill, the law, that were not proclaimed? Section 16 was not proclaimed. Why? This concerns registration requirements. Section 18 was not proclaimed. It concerns the establishment of a register of real estate agents. Why? Section 19, mandatory written contracts between real estate agents and their clients. Contracts, mandatory, entre les clients and the estate agents. Why was that not proclaimed? Why was there, therefore, the need, Madam Speaker, to create a situation where there was no need for a mandatory written contract between real estate agents and clients. Who did they try to protect? What did they try to hide? What were the transactions that were about to take place when they were in power and they could not therefore afford to proclaim that very section? What were they hiding? Section 21, keeping accounts and audit provisions. What was so difficult to ensure that accounts and audit provisions were complied with? Section 23 and 24. C'est la folie. Suspicious transactions reporting and AML-CFT breaches. That's what we're here for. That's what the Honourable Minister is working for. That's why the co-chair, the Honourable Attorney General, is there working and helping us to achieve. Why was it so difficult? Why did they try? Let me change it. Why did they not at least try to proclaim Section 23 and 24 pertaining to suspicious transactions reporting and AML-CFT breaches? What were they trying to hide? I wish they would at least come out and tell us the truth. But the leader of the opposition, representing the rot that is the MSM, he has chosen to be absent again. And his partner, shoulder to shoulder with him, also absent today. Keep on spying on me, he says. Keep on listening to what I have to say. I shall say I'm not happy at what you're doing, but I will sit next to you and I will espouse your positions. This is what he's saying. Is it a coincidence that they choose not to be here today together? So I say again, Section 25 to 32. Why was it not proclaimed? Disciplinary framework for professionals' misconduct. Review of decisions by the authority. Madam Speaker, Section 44, offences and penalties, was not proclaimed. Section 46, the transitional provisions for existing practitioners, was not proclaimed. If you want to have the secret recipe as to how to create a bulldog sans dents, this is the masters of it, is the one who represents the MSM, who had for Prime Minister someone who is guilty of all those, in my view, offences. Because it is an offence against the nation not to proclaim. It is an offence against the people of this country to put us in a situation of risk again, in the name of protecting who and in the name of hiding what. That is the question. So what is the point, therefore, of having created the authority? To pay people to sit in there, do nothing? Madam Speaker, what is the objective of this government? For one thing, is not to replicate the mess, but to create a situation where we wipe the muck that they have left behind for us. We have to wipe it clean. The real estate authority has to be empowered to investigate. That they did not want. We have to ensure, and we are doing it. We have to ensure that the authority can conduct disciplinary proceedings, impose sanctions, control the register, and prosecute. They did not want that. You see, Madam Speaker, the amendments in Clause 18, since 2025, we have done everything possible to ensure that the real estate authority becomes operational as soon as possible. Most of the remaining sections of that act will now be proclaimed once this bill, we've done with it and it becomes a law, so that registrations can be effective. And it will be action once the relevant sections of the Act are amended as per the miscellaneous provisions. It will empower the authority to adopt a look-through approach, meaning the authority will not only ensure that agents are properly registered, but also that employees of agents who carry out agency work adhere to minimum standards. The very standards that the MSM did not want to hear of. It is unfortunate that there is no legislation that can enable any government to prosecute those who have caused a crime against the nation. Because this is incompetence, but this is criminal negligence. Furthermore, the bill will now extend the AML safety compliance obligations to state institutions for real estate transactions on a risk-sensitive basis. Madam Speaker, the way forward. We will finally have a proper register of agents, including developers and promoters, allowing for proper entry screening to ensure that only individuals with a proper track record may operate within this sector. Can you imagine, Madam Speaker, that some of the sections that were not proclaimed, and I say so, purposefully, knowingly, was sections between 25 and 32. The Act sets a clear framework to sanction misconduct, dishonesty, gross negligence, misuse of another real estate agent's information, failure to produce records, false statements, misrepresentation of ownership, acting without consent, accepting secret commissions, and acquiring interest in property without disclosure. So they did not want all of this transparency. They were allergic to it. And this is precisely what we will not do again. This will put them, not only their wrongdoing belongs to the past, but we are therefore obliged, duty-bound, to ensure that this doesn't happen again. Madam Speaker, you see why I am so passionate about this. I'll say so. Because I am aware, as Minister, that there are many properties belonging to the state that was given out by the former regime. You know, many people today say, there is almost no state land available on our coastline, on the beaches. True. Why? Because the former regime fin dilapide tout. In donné.
I see Creole is getting on now.
You see, when they gave it all out, and I know for a fact that many of those properties were developed. The question is, how many of those people's friends to whom they gave state land to develop in order to become millionaires, billionaires overnight, how many of them have registered at the authority when they could not have done it because it was not proclaimed? How many would have had to have contracts between their clients, agents? How many of those promoters would have had to have written contracts, but clearly cannot and will not because they were not obliged to have it because the law was not proclaimed? How many billions of rupees have been really made sur le dos des contribuables? And how many of those billions have been siphoned off outside the country? That is my question. And then they tried to bring their heads out from under the stone. They tried to pretend to be cleaner than, holier than thou. Madam, paragons of virtue. Madam Speaker, I'd like to say that we have been left with a Herculean task. It is not easy to clean up the mess. The easy part is making the mess without even thinking of tomorrow. Because this was their attitude. They did not think that they had to think of tomorrow. They just made the mess. That was the easy part. Now, creating confidence in institutions, ensuring that institutions work independently, ensuring that each of those institutions are given the right resources, capacity building, monitoring ability, enforcing ability, supervision ability. All this, it is for us to do. So the work, it is for those who believe honestly in change that will do it. They can go out there and pretend that they are, as I said, cleaner and they are the champions of the truth, but in fact, they are exactly the opposite. Now, let me conclude to say,
Yes.
I congratulate the leader of the opposition for his absence. I congratulate his friend sitting next to him, shoulder to shoulder, for his absence. But I heartily congratulate the Honorable Kirin, who is here, because he is true to himself and he is president. I therefore once again ask everyone in this House to congratulate the Honourable Minister for the excellent piece of work, together with the officers that she's produced and the officers of the Attorney General's office in the drafting of this legislation. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Yes, Honourable Minister, that was a mouthful. Up to you now.
Madam Speaker, let me thank the honourable members from both sides of the House for their valuable comments and appreciation of this important bill. Because important it is, Madam Speaker. Important not only in its own right, but as a matter of national interest. And this is why I wish to put on record my appreciation to all the honourable members for their support of this bill. Madam Speaker, let it be clear, money laundering, terrorism financing and proliferation financing are not merely regulatory concerns. They are fundamentally matters of national security. Illicit financial flows fuel organized crime, sustain drug trafficking networks, entrench corruption, and in more severe instances, facilitate acts of terrorism or the proliferation of weapons of mass destruction. Madam Speaker, this bill is comprehensive in scope and transformational in effect. As we conclude our deliberations today, I will address the concerns raised and set out the safeguards, implementation roadmap, and expected outcomes of this legislation, placing these measures in both national and international contexts. And allow me to reassure the House that this important piece of legislation, amending no less than 23 pieces of legislation, reflects a structured and progressive legislative process, aligned with national and international obligations. This bill is a strategic response to an evolving global and economic environment. Since our removal from the FATF increased monitoring list in October 2021, the FATF standards and methodology have continued to evolve to meet increasingly sophisticated financial crimes and emerging risk. And ever since this government took place, we have been continuously assessing and updating our exposure to those risks. The Prime Minister just elaborated the work being done by the 16 competent authorities, by the core group, by the National Committee, by the Interministerial Committee, under the oversight of the Prime Minister himself and the Cabinet. The whole thing commenced with the publication of the National Risk Assessment Report in May 2025, which, let me remind the House, was due since 2022, as the NRA is meant to be published every 3 years, and the last one was published in 2019. In the 2025 NRA report, technical compliance gaps were identified to the FATF standards. Reforms to strengthen the AML-CFT framework in preparation for the ESAMLAG mutual evaluation were also announced as far back as the last budget 2025-2026. Works have been ongoing since then to ensure that the drafting of this bill as well as consultation has been going on. These processes give a clear indication that the work on preparation and readiness of the mutual evaluation never stop. I say this, Madam Speaker, because during the past few months, it has been said repeatedly and publicly that Mauritius has been at major risk of going on the grey list, and the Prime Minister also referred to that. Not only was this narrative repeated over and over again, bringing or trying to bring our government to disrepute, as if we were sitting and doing nothing, but more gravely and more seriously, it has been putting the reputation of our country at risk, creating a fear factor and scaring investors. This has been nothing but irresponsible behavior. We must sustainably access evolving risk to keep our international financial center safe, secure, and reputable. These assessments inform our legislative amendments, which in turn provide necessary safeguards to our financial system. The 2025 NRA delivers a clear, actionable diagnosis. It identified risks or operational realities as recent high-profile investigations and asset seizures have shown. Whether through misuse of GBCs, complex trust structures, layering via cross-border transfers, or exploitation of cash-intensive sectors, the patterns of abuse demand faster, smarter, and more integrated responses. Madam Speaker, this government has been proactive. Not only have our regulatory authorities strengthened AML-CFT supervision and improved compliance culture among stakeholders, but we are also introducing the necessary changes ahead of the mutual evaluation to ensure that no sector under FATF purview remains exposed or under-supervised. These reforms are designed to ensure Mauritius aligns with international standards and is fully prepared for the forthcoming mutual evaluation. Madam Speaker, allow me now to address specific concerns raised during proceedings. Section 68A, investigative powers. Concerns were raised about the speed at which the Financial Crime Commission may request account information by email and the perceived removal of judicial oversight. It is important to emphasize that this measure is not a new unchecked power. The provision is carried forward from the repealed Asset Recovery Act. Before any request is made, the Commission must satisfy a three-part test. First, reasonable grounds to suspect criminal property. Second, that the information is of substantial value to the investigation. And third, that the request is in the public interest. These three statutory thresholds are meaningful safeguards designed to prevent arbitrary use of this power while enabling timely investigations into proceeds of crime. Section 56, FCC Police Investigation Coordination. Questions were asked about potential overlap between the FCC and the Independent Police Complaints Commission and whether cross-investigations erodes independence. The framework already existed but has been strengthened to close gaps and bolster accountability. Cross-investigation protocols are designed precisely to avoid conflict of interest. The FCC investigates police officers to prevent police self-investigation, and the police investigate FCC officers where appropriate. This reciprocal arrangement preserves impartiality, protects integrity, and sustains public confidence. Property of corresponding value and protection of third parties. Concerns were raised that the definition of property of corresponding value might sweep in innocent third parties. The statute explicitly protects bona fide purchasers. Paragraphs in the definition exclude property held by bona fide third parties. The law is therefore targeted at knowing participants in financial crimes, not innocent third parties who acquire assets in good faith. The FCC guidelines, shall versus may. Concerns were expressed about the wording of the FCC guidelines using may while the statute uses shall. Let me clarify the matter to the honourable member on the other side of the House who has raised this concern. The statutory obligation remains binding. Legal persons shall put in place adequate procedures to prevent financial crime. Guidelines, by contrast, are illustrative and discretionary instruments. They outline acceptable means of compliance, reflect international best practice, and assist entities in designing risk-appropriate controls. The permissive language in guidance preserves flexibility for diverse businesses, while the shall in statute preserves the unambiguous legal duty to have effective procedures. Responsibility for sufficiency tests rests with the legal person. The guidelines are complementary tools, not substitute for the statutory body, for the statutory duty. Next, the declaration of asset valuation of works of art and digital assets. On valuation concerns for work of assets and digital assets, the Declaration of Assets Unit of the FCC has a mandate to monitor declarations to detect unexplained wealth, not to certify precise market values. Declarants are required to declare works of art exceeding 500,000 rupees, which balances proportionality and detection of high-value concealment. Where declarations raise red flags, cases will be referred to the FCC Investigation Division, which may engage specialist valuers through expressions of interest to establish market value and support further inquiry. Madam Speaker, concerns were also raised regarding the exemption from penalty payment in cases of voluntary declaration of asset under Section 10(3) of the Declaration of Asset Act. I believe there is merit in the concern raised, and I shall be coming forward with an amendment to that provision during the committee stage. The relevant provision regarding voluntary disclosure proposal will be amended to include 3 binding safeguards. First, a strict 6-month time-limited window for relief after the prescribed deadline. Second, exclusion of any person already under investigation for offences under the DOA Act from eligibility. And third, a one-time only application per declarant. So these measures preserve the incentive for timely compliance while offering limited controlled relief to genuine late filers or administrative oversight. Madam Speaker, with regard to the provision regarding cases to be dealt with, and I quote, D die in diem, I shall be coming forward with an amendment during committee stage to the effect that the Supreme Court and the Intermediate Court shall proceed expeditiously with the trials, if possible, D die in diem. In other words, it will be up to the courts to decide whether the hearing will be D die in diem. Regarding the concerns of administrative burden, the risk of over-reporting, and an increase in cost of compliance. Madam Speaker, I acknowledge the concerns raised regarding administrative burden and the potential complexity that may arise due to enactment of these amendments. I am myself a big champion of striking the right balance between regulatory compliance and ease of doing business. Too much compliance can undermine ease of doing business. However, let us be clear, The reputation of Mauritius has no price. The long-term benefits of strengthening our position as a credible and internationally recognized financial center will far outweigh any short-term compliance cost. This position is consistent with international best practice and recognizes the inherently low-risk and private nature of such structures. By adopting a targeted approach, we ensure that regulatory efforts remain focused where the risks are highest, rather than imposing blanket obligations that may unnecessarily burden legitimate and low-risk entities such as family offices. This not only alleviates compliance costs, but also preserves the competitiveness and attractiveness of our jurisdiction for investment.
I'm sorry, Minister, I'm sorry. It looks as if you've got quite a lot to go.
I do, yes. I mean,
So-
another 10 minutes maybe.
Another 10 minutes? I don't think so. I think if you go through these pages, I hate to stop you, but c'est un peu inhumain aussi. Let us say we go until 7 o'clock, let's see. We will go until 7 o'clock, because we still, Minister, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Minister.
So let me focus on the amendments that will come on committee stage, because that I had to explain.
Yes, because we still have to go through committee stage.
Yes, let me just do
And
the...
I have a statement, and then I also have people who will speak after adjournment.
So
I
let
don't
me
know
focus
when.
on explaining why we are
Yes.
proposing some amendments, right?
Because I think the most of what you have been saying, you said at the beginning, when you introduced the bill, it seems to me. Yes, come with the amendments.
Okay, so insurance brokers being licensed under Insurance Act fall within the statutory definition of a financial institution for the purposes of FIAMLA. The general insurance businesses do not fall under the definition of activities of financial institution as defined by FATF. As such, their inclusion in the AML-CFT framework is derived from the legislation itself. The existing definition does not sufficiently distinguish between life and non-life insurance activities. I shall therefore come up with an amendment during committee stage to remove these activities from the definition of financial institutions under FIAMLA. There was also a remark made by the Leader of the Opposition on unchecked powers of regulatory authorities under the bill, which I think it's important that we deal with. Hence, they are subject to, I would like to remind the House that the mentioned authorities are statutory bodies, and they're subject to judicial review, and so they have an obligation not to act in accordance with the provision enshrined in empowering legislation, but also reasonably and justly and in accordance with the law of natural justice.
Judiciously. That's weird.
Madam Speaker, the leader, on the opposition side, there was also a valuable suggestion made regarding motor vehicle dealers and leasing companies. The Prime Minister spoke about it. Just wanted to add that work is going on at our ministry level and at the Ministry of Commerce level and at the interministerial level. There's a committee working on that, and we will be coming with amendments to, with proposal to regulate this sector, which, as we all know, has been used or being used for anti-money laundering. Allow me to deal with two comments. One was the FATF being a colonial-style legacy, where countries are coerced into adopting these international rules by developed countries. It is important to emphasize that FATF standards apply universally. They are not directed at developing countries alone. Every jurisdiction developed or developing is subject to the same evaluation framework. In fact, many developed countries have themselves faced serious scrutiny and periods of enhanced monitoring, and there are various examples of countries that have been subjected to that: Iceland, Monaco, British Virgin Islands, etc. I would also like to respond to one important clarification. Let me find my papers. J'avais deux papiers là. There was also a comment made regarding the balance between direct tax and indirect tax. And it was said that it is not true that the offshore sector is the biggest tax contributor in Mauritius, and that is not true. What I had said in my speech, and I always repeat that, and that's proven by, that's actually in an economic assessment report done by the University of Mauritius, an economic impact assessment report done by the University of Mauritius last year, and which showed that 65% of corporate tax revenue in Mauritius comes from the financial services sector, and 34% of the revenue of PAYE revenue come from the financial services sector. So now one can argue that direct taxes, the balance of direct and indirect taxes is not right in Mauritius. It is, I checked with a few other countries, we are quite aligned with that, with some countries. But I agree, and we have been campaigning on that VAT has too much of a burden in our country. And who pays VAT? It's the citizens, it's the people of the country. And we have campaigned on that the economic model or the fundamental model of our country is wrong. And for that, Madam Speaker, like for example, in Mauritius, we pay 30% of our tax revenues are from direct tax revenue, from PAYE and corporate tax, and 53% is through indirect tax. Now, for us, of course, we want more direct tax than and less pressure on the consumers, so less indirect tax. But how do we do that? We are a consumption-driven economy, and this is where we need to change the economic model. We need to come with a production-driven economy. We need more enterprises investing. We need more exporting. We need more jobs so companies can pay taxes and employees can pay taxes. That's how we can increase the direct taxes component and reduce the indirect taxes or VAT tax components. So, Madam Speaker, let me reassure the House that this legislative package is focused on clear practical goals and guiding principles. And let me skip that, Madam Speaker, because it's going to say again what I had said and many speakers have said. So in the interest of time, I will skip those.
I'm sure, Minister, there will be a lot of opportunity for you in the future to come back on the very important issues that obviously you would like to deal with. So today is the bill. We've circulated the amendments. Everybody's got the amendments? Yes. Okay.
So let me conclude, Madam Speaker, by saying that this government is being proactive by bringing the necessary changes before the next mutual evaluation, so as to ensure that no segment under the purview of the FATF remains exposed or under-supervised. And I respectfully urge the honourable members to support this bill. By doing so, we will strengthen the integrity of our financial system, protect our national security and public institutions, preserve investor confidence and our international standing, ensure that Mauritius remains a jurisdiction where legitimate commerce flourishes and criminals are denied refuge. In closing, let me reiterate our commitments. We will implement these reforms swiftly and transparently. We will resource and train our institutions. We will monitor outcomes and adapt where necessary, and we will cooperate fully with international partners to demonstrate measurable effectiveness. Madam Speaker, with this, I commend the bill to the House.
I need the bill, I need it to be seconded. Yes? You're seconding? Okay, Minister of Agriculture, seconding. Good. So, I think the question is that we proceed with the second reading, right? Let me get it straight. I'm a bit lost myself. Okay, question is that the anti-money laundering, combating the financing of terrorism and countering proliferation financing miscellaneous provisions bill be read a second time. Those in favour say aye. Those against say no. The ayes have it.
Committee stage. Clause 1, short title. Clause 2, Bank of Mauritius Act amended. Clause 3, Banking Act amended.
The question is that the clauses 1 to 3 stand part of the bill. Those in favour say aye. Those against say no. The ayes have it.
Clause 4, Companies Act amended.
There's an amendment.
I move that Clause 4 be amended as per amendment circulated.
Okay, good. Nobody wants to speak. Very good. The question is that Clause 4 be amended as per amendment circulated. Those in favour say aye. Those against say no. The ayes have it. The question is that Clause 4, as amended, stand parts of the bill. Those in favour say aye. Those against say no. The ayes have it.
Clause 5, Cooperatives Act amended.
The question is that Clause 5 stands part of the bill. Those in favour say aye. Those against say no. The ayes have it.
Clause 6, Courts Act amended.
Yeah, there's an amendment.
Madam Speaker, I move that Clause 6 be amended as per the amendments circulated.
Okay, good. Question is that Clause 6 be amended as per amendments circulated. Those in favour say aye. Aye. Those against say no. The ayes have it. The question is that Clause 6 as amended stands part of the bill. Those in favour say aye. Aye. Those against say no. The ayes have it.
Clause 7, Declaration of Assets Act amended.
Again, there's an amendment.
Madam Speaker, I move that Clause 7 be amended as per amendments circulated.
Okay, the question is that Clause 7 be amended as per amendment circulated. Those in favour say aye. Those against say no. The ayes have it. Then the question is that Clause 7 as amended stands part of the bill. Those in favour say aye. Those against say no. The ayes have it.
Clause 8, Environment Act 2024 amended.
The question is that Clause 8 stands part of the bill. Those in favour say aye. Aye. Those against say no. The ayes have it.
Clause 9, Financial Crimes Commission Act 2023 amended.
There's another amendment.
Madam Speaker, I move that Clause 9 be amended as per amendment circulated.
Yes. The question is that Clause 9 be amended as per amendment circulated. Those in favour say aye. Aye. Those against say no. The ayes have it. The question is that Clause 9 as amended stands part of the bill. Those in favour say aye. Aye. Those against say no. The ayes have it.
Clause 10, Financial Intelligence and Anti-Money Laundering Act amended.
Yes, another amendment.
Madam Speaker, I move that Clause 10 be amended as per amendment circulated.
The question is that clause 10 be amended as per amendments circulated. Those in favour say aye. Aye. Those against say no. The ayes have it. Question is that clause 10 as amended stands part of the bill. Those in favour say aye. Aye. Those against say no. The ayes have it.
Clause 11, Financial Reporting Act amended. Clause 12, Financial Services Act amended. Clause 13, Foundations Act amended. Clause 14, Gambling Regulatory Authority Act amended. Clause 15, Income Tax Act amended. Clause 16, Mauritius Revenue Authority Act amended. Clause 17, National Payment Systems Act amended. Clause 18, Real Estate Authority Act 2020 amended. Clause 19, Registration of Associations Act amended. Clause 20, Trusts Act amended. Clause 21, United Nations Financial Prohibitions, Arms Embargo and Travel Ban Sanctions Act amended. Clause 22, Value-Added Tax Act amended. Clause 23, Companies, Beneficial Owner, Percentage of Shares, Regulations 2019 amended. Clause 24, Registration of Associations, Regulation 1979 amended.
Question is that clauses 11 to 24 stand part of the bill. Those in favour say aye. Aye. Those against say no. The ayes have it.
First schedule.
Yes, there's an amendment.
Madam Speaker, I move that the first schedule be amended as per amendment circulated.
The question is that the first schedule be amended as per amendment circulated. Those in favour say aye. Aye. Those against say no. The ayes have it. The question is the first schedule as amended stands part of the bill. Those in favour say aye. Aye. Those against say no. The ayes have it.
Second
schedule. The question is that the second schedule stands part. Second schedule.
Second schedule.
Okay. The question is that the second schedule stands part of the bill. Those in favour say aye. Aye. Those against say no. The ayes have it.
Title and enacting clause.
The question is that the title and enacting clause stand part of the bill. Those in favour say aye. Aye. Those against say no. The ayes have it. The question is that I do report to the House. Honourable Bhagwan, may I finish? Yes. Thank you. The question is that I do report to the House that the Anti-Money Laundering, Combating the Financing of Terrorism and Counterfeiting, Proliferation Financing, Miscellaneous Provisions Bill number 3 of 2026 has passed the committee stage with amendments. Those in favour say aye. Aye. Those against say no. The ayes have it. The question is that I do report to the House. No, I'm sorry. Now, honourable members, please resume your seats. You've already done so. Honourable members, thank you for resuming your seats so early. Honourable members, I have to report to the House that the Anti-Money Laundering, Combating the Financing of Terrorism and Counterfeiting, Proliferation Financing, Miscellaneous Provisions Bill number 3 of 2026 has passed the committee stage with amendments.
Third reading.
Yes.
Speaker, I move that the Anti-Money Laundering, Combating the Financing of Terrorism and Countering Proliferation Financing, Miscellaneous Provisions Bill number 3 of 2026 be read a third time and passed.
Yes, it has to be seconded. Yes, again. Thank you. The question is, I am going to repeat that. It's a very long one. The question is that the Anti-Money Laundering, Combating the Financing of Terrorism and Countering Proliferation Financing, Miscellaneous Provisions Bill number 3 of 2026 be read the third time and passed. Those in favour say aye. Aye. Those against say no. The ayes have it.
Statement by Minister.
Yes, Honorable CQN.
Madam Speaker, with your permission, I would like to make a statement to the House in regard to the issue raised at the sitting of Tuesday, 24th of March 2026 by the Honourable Leader of the Opposition during my reply to the P&Q, more precisely the contract allocated to the supply of fuel oil used by the CEB. Given the strict obligations as per the contract on both the State Trading Corporation and the supplier to maintain confidentiality over all documents and information exchanged in connection with the contract, unless prior written consent is obtained, same had to be sold. I am pleased to inform the House that the supplies agreement has now been obtained to share the document as it is for transparency purposes. I am therefore tabling a copy of the agreement between the State Trading Corporation and Sahara Energy Resource Limited. It is important to note that this government is dedicated to fostering transparency and accountability, a shift from the previous administration approach, which did not emphasize the tabling of contracts for public awareness. The current emphasis on transparency is crucial for maintaining public trust and ensuring that all stakeholders are informed of government action. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you so much. Yes, Honourable Minister of Housing.
Madam Speaker,
Adjournment.
I move for the adjournment of the House to Tuesday, the 21st of April 2026 at 11:30 a.m.
Good, the House stands adjourned. Okay, adjournment matter.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Tonight, I raise a concern about Rodrigues' rising cost of living, which is worsening due to price increases felt in the local market. I address this issue to the Honourable Minister of Commerce and Consumer Protection. Basic products and items have seen noticeable price hikes, forcing families to drastically adjust their budgets and, in some cases, to make tough choices and sacrifices about spending priorities. It's not a question of stock availability, but high freight rate. Now, Speaker, I seize this opportunity to urge the Honourable Minister to advocate for government's compassionate response to the challenges Rodrigues' population faces. I humbly ask for remedial measures grounded in the people's needs to be continuously considered, and maybe in the coming budget exercise, knowing that there is the price stabilization structure, subsidy on some essential goods, and maximum price system for some controlled products that should be extended and reviewed. I believe we have to go the extra mile to alleviate the expenses of Rodrigues consumers. Coût la vie plus cher dans Rodrigues, à nous soulage pouvoir d'achat bonne famille. To conclude, Madam Speaker, I urge the Honourable Minister to engage with local stakeholders to initiate an inquiry to understand in detail the impact of the high cost of living on different aspects of Rodrigues' resident lives, especially vulnerable families and our youngsters. And I thank you.
Thank you so much.
Madam Speaker, I wish to inform the House that my ministry is already working on a new list of products to be subsidized.
Thank you.
It will be for Mauritius and Rodrigues.
And Rodrigues. Thank you. Honourable Bichuk.
Yes, Madam Speaker, I will seek your indulgence for this issue, which is addressed to both the Honourable Minister of ICT and the Minister of Commerce, who is in charge of consumer protection. Madam Speaker, currently, prepaid data package users of Mighty buy data packages which has a fixed validity, duration of its validity. It can be daily, weekly, or monthly, or even more. However, after the balance, the credit, is over, the mobile service provider recklessly stops the data package instantly. All of a sudden, a mobile user has no means of communication. He is deprived of his data connection despite being valid. Consequently, he has no internet connection to log on to any online recharge platforms like Juice, Tag, Mighty Money to recharge his or her balance. This is ridiculously unreasonable Madam Speaker, therefore, I would request both the Honorable Minister of ICT and the Minister of Commerce in charge of consumer protection to make sure that this deceitful practice ends. Thank you, Madam.
Thank you very much.
Madam Speaker, I thank the honourable member for having raised that issue. But if when we are driving a car, if petrol gets over, the car breaks down immediately. So I believe that while we are using this mobile device, whether we have a fixed contract or a contract of determined time, there is a moment where it will lapse. There are notifications that are sent,
Yes.
and there also is an SOS service available that will give you additional credit for which you can pay later. But having said that, I will confirm this latter statement and revert on this. As far as I remember, Madam Speaker, that service is available because we are very well conscious of the fact that people may need connection at some point in time, and at times it can be really in very urgent cases. So I will check that second statement and I will revert, Honourable Member. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you very much, everybody. Enjoy your evening.